Welcome to Overnight Wisdom, a show where we sit with change makers, artists, business leaders, and thinkers. Each conversation is an invitation to slow down, to go deeper, and unearth the quiet insights that shape who we are. If you're seeking honest reflections, unexpected wisdom, and a deeper understanding of what it takes to not merely survive, but to thrive, you're in the right place. Hi, friends. Welcome to a reflection episode of 2025 for Overnight Wisdom. When I started this podcast, or when I decided to finally make a move on the podcast, I wasn't quite sure what to expect from it. All I knew was that I wanted to talk to people from all over the world who would inspire me and my listeners. I wanted to learn and I wanted to acquire new perspectives from people doing amazing things across the world. And when I decided to do a weekly podcast, I'm not sure it was like a conscious decision. And I guess I also needed that consistency for myself. So it's something that I do every week and I look forward to. I did not realize how much work it was going to be, but it has been fulfilling work. You know, when I'm taking stock of all that has happened with the podcast this year and realizing that I am essentially a team of one, plus my husband who, helps me a little bit with the uploading of the episodes onto the internet so it can reach you. I'm really proud of what me and him, but especially myself, has achieved this year. Creating a podcast is no joke. Creating a weekly podcast is, it's not an easy thing to do. So I'm very thankful for the ability to be consistent. And I also want to say thank you to the listeners who have kept me encouraged to continue, because of course if I'm putting this out into the world and no one is listening, then what's the point? So it's really nice to have the ongoing support and listenership and viewership from you. So thank you very much. Overnight Wisdom has always been a space where I wanted to spark curiosity and challenges, and at the same time share tools and resources that help us see things differently or even learn new things. So far, we have had 30 episodes, y'all. Can you imagine? 30 episodes. So since May 28th, it's been 30 weeks and I have released an episode every single week. And I just want to look back very quickly on my guests and what I've taken from them. I've learned something from every guest I've had. And I want to share very quickly and also thank them. My first guest was Michael Aboya, Ghanaian photographer who shared so honestly about loss and also why it is important for him to photograph Black bodies and Africans with dignity and the respect that they deserve, especially in a context where oftentimes the pictures that come out of Africa in the global north or in the west is usually of pain, hunger, and strife. Next, I spoke to Lola Akinmade, brilliant Nigerian author who intentionally tells stories that are recognizable, that are accessible, and actively positions racialized women as intersectional, especially in spaces where they are often reduced to one thing. My next guest was Chisom Ibe, Nigerian illustrator who basically illustrated the first fetus in the womb. Can you imagine that? And in so doing, he unlocked so much for a lot of women of color and a lot of racialized women, because up until that point, every fetus we've ever seen in the womb is of a white fetus. And when he drew a Black fetus, there was a whole conversation about it. So his illustration has expanded beyond that, but it continues to make impact and it continues to mirror Black and brown bodies. The next guest was Jameson Timber. Jameson is a brilliant politician who actively fights for what he considers to be the freedom of Zimbabweans. So, yeah, he is from Zimbabwe. My next guests were Twins Don't Beg, two twin brothers who catapulted from obscurity using their photography and who've had to, survive or transcend rejections to become the household names that they are in Ghana. The next guest was Linda Masarera. She founded a political party and she's actively fighting for the decolonization and re-indigenization of her people in Zimbabwe. Next was Lord Lamba, my little cousin. So I know him as Promise Anabogo. He shot into social media success as I think sometimes for people who do not know him, they just see him as that comedian, not really knowing his story and all he had to overcome to be where he is today. So thoroughly proud of him, and it was great to have a conversation. And Promise, of course, is Nigerian. My next guest was Tendai Rokonez, beautiful yogi and teacher and instructor. She turns the wellness and mental health industry on its head with her work. She also actively challenges who gets to practice and who gets to teach yoga, and also whose body is the right body for yoga. No one moves a room like Tendai. I've had Tendai, facilitate wellness sessions at every conference that we've had, and nobody moves a room as well as Tendai does. And Tendai is Zimbabwean. Joy Mbakwe is Nigerian and British, and we talked about her work and how she actively educates against racism in the UK. One of the things she said that stuck with me was where she talked about some people were born Black and some people become Black. That was really great to engage her. Next guest was Chef Kudakwashe Makoni. He's a acclaimed Zimbabwean chef. This man is just brilliant. His energy is contagious, and he's also very actively Pan-African. He wants to elevate Africa using African cuisine. And, he talks about the importance of consistency and quality for all that Africans do as we continue to grow and elevate into the world. My next guest was Thais Sarah, a musician with roots, I believe in France, the UK, Morocco, probably parts of West Africa, and spent quite a bit of time in the US and Canada. So kind of like a global citizen. What was fascinating about that was we, of course, talked a bit about her music, but it ended up almost being like a therapy session. She shared so openly about her process and her mental health and, what she does to safeguard it. So I really enjoyed that conversation because it became quite a therapeutic session. My next guest was Lujang Diangos from South Sudan. And it was really interesting connecting with him about his music, learning about where he draws inspiration from, and at the same time connecting with what he shared about the importance of singing happy songs. He spent so long singing sad songs because of the political context of South Sudan and it being war-torn, but then really decided that he was going to spread joy with his work, and that's what he does now, so really love that. My next guest was Babatunde Akimboboye. Oh my gosh. I mean, the man is brilliant, and I love the energy and the confidence he exuded, in the way only a Nigerian can. Yeah, and, this is a man who, he's an opera singer, and he created a new genre called hip opera. And he essentially saw an established system, which is the opera space, and went, I'm going to disrupt that. And he did exactly that. So it was so much joy talking to him, and it amazes me and reinforces just like Nigerians are remarkable in so many ways. Babatunde is American and Nigerian. My next guest was DJ Bokwali, who is a Pan-African who resides in Kenya. He is a fierce advocate for a Pan-African perspective as a way to build power, as not just, politically, but economically and socially. It was fascinating talking to him. His belief of change, his belief that we need to hold on to the things that make us uniquely African. Really appreciated that conversation. My next guest was Shayantani Sahar, who I had twice actually on my podcast. Shayantani Sahar is Indian. She is my chief of staff and also a senior manager at one of my companies, Diversify. So we talked about what we're doing in terms of the summit, which was a difficult thing for us to put together this year. So we shared our experiences there. And also we had a podcast at the Nobel Peace Center in Oslo, where we were talking about the state of the world and how we're navigating and processing that. My next guest was Dayo Kunsami, Nigerian lawyer, brilliant as they come. Was really great connecting with him, learning from his experience, and also him sharing his views around leadership. What I really valued was his, the value he placed on fatherhood and how he shows up for his kids and how he prioritizes that. Something else I found fascinating was this man turned down $1 million bribe. Just, he has so much integrity, but I just want to mirror this, yeah? And he was offered $1 million years ago. Today $1 million is still a lot of money, but years ago where it was a lot of money, and he said no. So I really love that. Just shows the type of man he is. My next guest was Ifeanyi Mbanefo, also known as Prince Mbanefo. He's my childhood friend, and we're talking about religion as a site of division in Nigeria, especially when we're looking at Christianity and Islam. I believe that religion is a colonial import. I believe that it is meaningful in many ways in how it holds people, when it gives people a sense of self, an identity and grounding. However, it has also been utilized as a political weapon to divide and conquer in Nigeria and also across Africa and really across the world. There are a lot of wars in the world that are fought on the name of religion. So that was a great conversation to have. Ifeanyi Mbanefo, of course, is Nigerian and American. My next guest was Wanjira Matai, who is a brilliant environmentalist and continues to do great work and advocate for the environment, but not just the environment as a separate thing that, okay, let's care about nature, but the environment as part and parcel of who we are and how we survive, especially within an African context. So really appreciated that. And she's the daughter of the Nobel Peace Prize winner, Wangari Maathai. Next was Yaba Blay. Dr. Yaba Blay is amazing. She is so brilliant. When you talk to her, you're just you are in the presence of somebody who is just brilliant beyond words. Yeah. And, she opened my mind to different ways of thinking, to beauty as a site of struggle. She said some things that remain with me. Home is where your humanity is acknowledged, where you don't have to defend yourself. She also challenged a perspective I had around colorism and proximity to whiteness. Take, for example, when we see people who bleach their skin, it's so easy to judge them and say, oh my gosh, you must hate yourself. Why are you doing that awful thing to your skin? But that's where a lot of that conversation stops. It doesn't extend beyond, do we look at the context in which they are operating in and the context in which they are surviving in? If they are in a system and a structure where lighter skin is favored, from a workplace perspective, from a love perspective, especially say in African contexts where sometimes the value of a woman is often tied to her ability to marry or not. And then you have men who tell you that they only marry or they only date people with light skin. So there are constraints that force people into making decisions that they make. And then sometimes we just judge them as people who do not like themselves. So it allows me now to think with a lot more grace, not just when I look at beauty or colorism or people who bleach their skin, but it's been more expansive. So Dr. Yaba Blay is as brilliant as they come. She opens her mouth and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn. I'm going to be educated. I'm going to be taken to church. So she's wonderful. Dr. Yaba Blay is Ghanaian American. And Wanjira Matai is Kenyan. So my next guest was Shruti Ganguly, who is a brilliant filmmaker, producer. Shruti comes by way of Oslo, Oman, India, the US. I think she would say New York. She is, when Shruti enters a room, there's so much light that comes into that room, and she radiates just so much light and so much joy in every room she steps into. And you know, she has a wonderful body of work. Two things I want to share is when Shruti talked about being unboxable, because she's moved and continues to move between different spaces in the arts world, in the film world, in the producing world. And something else she shared, which is so meaningful because it's also something I deeply believe in, is not asking for permission. So that stays with me. Really love that. My next guest, was Tandy Diani, and Tandy is a dear friend, a collaborator, and somebody I deeply respect. Tandy is Danish South African, and she really talked about the importance of being recognizably you as a leader, you know, and I really love that. She said something that has since stuck with me is oftentimes we talk about people and trust. And she said, sometimes we also have to trust people for them to become trustworthy. Yeah. So that challenged me. Yeah. Because sometimes we say somebody's not trustworthy, but for anyone to become trustworthy, you actually have to trust them. You have to take that risk. You have to take that chance. So I really appreciated that. But she emphasized about the importance of being recognizably you in every room. Astrid Sundberg was my next guest. Astrid is a Scandi Brit, as she calls herself. So she's from the UK and also from Norway. And she is a leader currently in an organization called Operation Smile. But I've known her across different organizations and companies she's worked in, and she's always been a wonderful leader. She talks a lot about the importance of being authentic, also the importance of having fun in the work that you do. Otherwise, what's the point? My next guest was Purnima Luthra, who is Singaporean by India, by Denmark, and now she's relocated to the UK, where she works at Imperial Business School. Purnima Luthra and I talked about, you know, leadership, the challenges that it comes with, but also just how she processes and guides leaders in their journey. Our conversation spanned different topics from cancel culture to colonialism to leading in a Western masculine construct, and also how she protects herself given the work that she does. Purnima Luthra is also a acclaimed author, and she is a dedicated diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongings practitioner. And this year in 2025, doing anything in DEI politically was very difficult. And so we also talk about what it took for her to stand her ground and stand in her values. My most recent guest was Jonathan Akwe, who is the president at Translation and also part of the executive leadership team at United Masters, in basically two organizations that are shaping culture. It was really fascinating talking to Jonathan and hearing about how he thinks about culture. And as somebody who works at the intersection of culture myself, it was really great to hear it articulated in such a meaningful, accessible way. Thinking about culture, you know, as rituals, as artifacts, as, you know, language that people hold and what connects them, and how somebody can have more in common with, like how I, for example, can have more in common with someone who comes from a completely different culture, construct, and language, because we share and have adopted into a specific culture, say hip hop or say yoga, for example. So that was a really great conversation. And I also enjoyed, you know, kind of talking about, in this day and time in a world that is so geopolitically strained, how can organizations stand in their values without swinging to whatever political breeze that is currently blowing? So that was really great. So yeah, that makes all the guests I have had so far. Jonathan Akwe is British, Swiss, Nigerian, and currently lives in the US. So I've really appreciated all my guests. I want to thank them for coming on my show. I'm incredibly grateful for all these conversations I've had. They've changed me, they've challenged me, they've nourished me. And I also want to say thank you to my listeners. Without you, it's a lot more difficult to do this show. So I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. And we are going to take a short break for 2 weeks, but we will be back by the second week of January with our usual programming of weekly shows. Here's to more growth for each one of us. Here's to peace in the world. Oh my gosh, world peace. I sound like a beauty queen. World peace. Here's to world peace. And here's to growing overnight wisdom. Thank you all for being on this journey with me. I'm looking forward to sharing so many interesting and fascinating episodes with you all next year. I have lined up some really phenomenal people and leaders from across the world. So I'm looking forward to sharing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. And see you in a few weeks. Happy holidays and happy New Year in advance. Thank you for spending time with us on Overnight Wisdom. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you pause, please leave a comment, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're feeling generous, a rating or review goes a long way in helping others find us too. Until next time, stay curious, stay tender, and may the wisdom you need find you exactly when you're ready.